As of the uploading of this video, it has been a full month since the hardcore wipe began, and over those 30 days, a lot has happened. Some of it for the better of the game, and others have me still scratching my head as to why changes were made so soon after the whole thing was released. It's kind of been a whirlwind with everything going down on top of just playing the game and trying to make the hardcore experience work and to be successful in it. Luckily, it hasn't been all bad, but there have been so many changes and iterations that we should just have a conversation about the hardcore wipe in its entirety. So, let's go over the first month of this wipe. The good, the bad, the ugly, recapping most of what happened with the traders, mechanics, and pretty much everything else in between. The point of this hardcore wipe was twofold. First, it was to simply shake up the game in a way that has never been experienced before. Putting so many restrictions across the game forces the community to either adapt or to simply walk away for the time being, and those restrictions hit pretty much every avenue of engagement for the player. Items costing more, selling for less, no flea market, insurance so expensive it becomes not worth it. So many different places this hardcore wipe could be felt. And while we were given somewhat of a heads up in that regard, the screenshots of the changes didn't tell the whole story either. Secure container restrictions, to which we didn't have a clue what that meant until we played. It was a big risk for BSG to take. Many changes were going to instantly bounce off this wipe. It wasn't what some players want out of EFT. They want their deathmatch, run around and do nothing but fight other players experience. And while that isn't a wrong desire, that experience has now been firmly placed inside of Arena if that's all you want out of Tarkov. Second, and more importantly, this wipe was a test. A chance for BSG to see how far they can push some of these more restrictive changes. What people are okay with, what needs to come back, and what can be met in the middle. There's a high likelihood that some bits of what has changed here in this hardcore wipe will be around when 1.0 hits, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe the cost of insurance will be more than what we're used to, but not as expensive as it is now. Maybe only certain items are allowed inside the secure container before and during raids. Who knows? And that's kind of the exciting part. With all this raw data and general discussion around this wipe, BSG could potentially have the blueprints needed for a successful 1.0 should they use that information correctly. Now that's a heavy statement because 1.0 could be one of two things. Either very similar to the game we currently have with some touch-ups here and there, or a much different game that we basically have to relearn after thousands of hours. Now the biggest question surrounding this wipe is, was it successful or not? We've talked about my own personal grievances with this wipe, and the gist was that the idea was awesome, but the execution was anything but. Things changed too rapidly without trying to find any alternative solutions to problems that players were pointing out. The biggest one to me was how fast the forced transits were removed. Granted, they were essentially broken, and worse, they have been broken since they were introduced over a year ago. If BSG had addressed them in a timely manner, like they should have to prepare for this wipe, I still believe having the transit be our primary transportation around Tarkov at the beginning would have worked. The plan was to always open up the map and slowly roll out better loyalty levels with the traders as the wipe progressed. But I'm surprised by how fast we've already gotten to some of the traders to level 3, especially Rev. To me at this point, the hardcore wipe is basically over, and what remains are some inconveniences that have yet to be reverted back to before this patch dropped. The speed was something I figured might take a little longer to get where we are now, but upon reflection, a full month to have level 3 traders available isn't that bad. Maybe it's just the fact we've been so inundated with changes, far more than we have when compared to previous years. My hope, I suppose, was that things were going to get to all traders to level 2 around now, which, again, thinking about it, is too long for how fast the player base can plow through this game under the right circumstances. 2 weeks for level 2 was about right. My only hope is that we don't see level 4 traders for a while. Even though their inventories at max loyalty level don't change that much, at the very least just keep that stuff out of the accessible rotation for the time being. Another week or two at least would be lovely, but time is only gonna tell. Was this experience worth all the grief from the community? Again, it's something we've discussed previously, but the simple answer is yes, and the more nuanced answer is kind of. At the very least, I will commend BSG for being willing to take the risk of shaking the game up as much as they have. Tarkov has never really gone through a phase like this, where from day one, our ability to use all the mechanics offered in the game is so compromised. Again, I would have liked to seen some more grace and finesse with how many of the changes were handled, because they needed a scalpel to make these changes, and they ended up using a hammer. Not ideal when so much is being changed so fast and all at once, but to their credit, again, they were paying very close attention to everything and making changes to the hardcore wipe almost every day. Tarkov is such a divisive game from the get-go just because it's a weird, obtuse extraction shooter, but the ripple across the community this go-around was something I haven't seen since maybe the Inertia introduction years ago. So many voices about whether this wipe was a failure or not, but don't get me wrong, I mean, I've thrown my hat into the ring as well. We've been talking extensively about this wipe since it began, because it's important. There are major implications with everything that has happened so far, and all roads lead to 1.0. If we're still getting it later this year, there's a good chance it will borrow from this wipe in many regards. So, to me, having BSG mess around for the first time since day one of a wipe is valuable, even if it's not what the majority, or maybe in this case the minority of people who play EFT want. Regardless of what's in store for the future, I am, at the end of the day, glad this wipe exists and that BSG did it. I've said this a dozen times, but once more won't hurt. This game needed a shakeup on this level. If we just got the exact same wipe again with some new gear and maybe 100% bosses at the start, people would have just complained it's the same old song and dance for the billionth time. At least now there's a story to tell with the final wipe before 1.0. And to me, there's something special in that. A full month has passed since the start of the first official hardcore wipe, and with it a lot of changes, conversations, capitulations, and more have culminated into an experience that is much different from the status quo. More restrictions, more expenses, less income, it all works together to foster a game that has put such an important emphasis on your life and, more importantly, survival. You don't always have to wipe the lobby, you don't even have to take out any scavs. Just collecting your quest items, looting around, and extracting is more than enough when you're hurting on rubles to keep your wipe experience going. The best part of this, despite everything wrong with it, is that it really goes back to the most important goal of EFT, playing the game the way you want to while you're in raid. Even if people would argue they can't because they have no access to good gear, that's the point. You're supposed to take it slower, scavenge around, and fight tooth and nail for every crumb you can get your hands on. It's been 30 days of hardcore. I wonder what's going to happen with 30 more. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts on the hardcore wipe after its first month, where you stand right now in terms of progression, and be sure to subscribe for more videos about the breakdown of the most controversial wipe experience Tarkov has ever had. I hope to see you in future ones.